Number 1.
Years ago, I was active on LiveJournal, and so was my ex-girlfriend. Somehow she met this dude named Jeff, who despite being a hardcore born-again Christian and Republican, complete with a Confederate flag in his bio, he wanted to be friends with us, a pair of college-age girls in a lesbian relationship. Even then, I was sure all he wanted was pictures of us making out. I friended him back to humor my very persistent girlfriend. At first, he seemed like a pretty normal dude, was from New England, worked in a hardware store, and had recently moved to Florida to be close to his girlfriend, Julie. But then I noticed something weird throughout his posts. Every single one was about this girlfriend, and how they had been separated against their will, and he couldn't get into contact with her, and was basically dying from heartbreak. At one point he mentioned that he last saw her at the end of her sophomore year of college, which given this guy's lack of physical appeal and age, was really out of the blue. Around this time my girlfriend started texting him, and he was immediately super clingy, doing the whole "hey, hi, hey" thing for literally 40 texts if she didn't respond right away. But through this she learned more about his past relationship. They'd met on LiveJournal and started dating online, but when he moved to be close to her and her parents found out about him, they broke it off. They planned to reconnect when she got back into college in the fall, but in the meantime he was still trying to get into contact with her by some other means. He claimed that her friends, also disgusted by the age difference, had gone behind her back and blocked him from all of her accounts, and on her phone. My girlfriend, perhaps feeling the forbidden love sympathy, said that she would help him track her down. I didn't buy it. Like, why not make a new account or whatever? Or just tell her friends to fuck off. Now keep in mind, this was about 10 years ago, so I'm still pretty shaky on the details. But something specific hit me, and I decided to Google him as best I could. I'm glad I did, because my girlfriend had just found a ton of personal info on this girl, and was about to pass it along to him. Yeah, I know, she really dug the whole forbidden love thing. I found Julie's LiveJournal, and her public entries all hinted that she was healing from something really horrible. Real bummer. The first bit of information I was able to find on Jeff is that he had been fired at a job in New England for hitting on a teenage girl, and then it got really fucked up. Jeff found Julie on LiveJournal when she was 15, and he was in his late 30s. She was young and lonely, and they would message each other all the time. Then one day, he showed up outside her high school 1,000 miles away and told her that they could run away together. I don't know if she only later realized that she had been victimized by a dude twice her age, or if it was a sexual assault. Either way, sex happened in his car. She filed the police report and got a restraining order against him. His whole story of her parents breaking off the relationship was technically true, but he had left out some pretty major details. By the time my girlfriend and I were talking to him, he had been stalking Julie for about 4 years. We had been talking to a turbo stalker and child rapist, and perhaps unwittingly helping him find his victim again, or at least my dumbass ex-girlfriend was. I called the cops, but it turns out there wasn't much they could do. He hadn't found her specifically, and unless he violated the restraining order, they couldn't really arrest the guy for posting sappy shit on his LiveJournal. Luckily, we were able to delete him a few days later without having to confront him about any of it. You see, he texted my girlfriend a bunch of really disgusting sexual comments about me, so problem solved. We blocked him on all accounts and haven't heard from him since. I genuinely hope Julie got free of him, and that maybe he's dead in a ditch somewhere in Florida.
Number 2.
First of all, I'm a 22-year-old male. I exercise a lot, so I'm pretty stocky and muscular. Not somebody you would try to actively avoid in a dark alley, but also not someone you would really want to pick on. I'm a pretty average guy. Anyways, before this starts sounding like your typical dating profile, let's begin. I was with my girlfriend and it was around 10 p.m., so it was dark out. We had just left a friend's house to meet some other friends at an Applebee's about 20 minutes away. We pulled out of the driveway and started heading that way. About 3 minutes down the road, I noticed a large truck following us very closely. It swerved a little bit, but the driver didn't seem drunk. The speed limit was about 45, and I was going about 50, as it was a fairly straight road and not a lot of cars were on it. The driver then started flashing his lights. This is normally a pretty universal sign that either my lights are off, or he wants me to pull over, or I'm not driving adequately. I recently had my car inspected and passed, so it wasn't the lights. I was driving just over the speed limit, and there was no way I was going to pull over. Plus, it was a passing area, so he could have passed me if he wanted to, so I just kept driving. The truck then got literally right behind us, not 15 or 20 feet, but right behind us, and there was no other cars around. So I decided to start taking side roads. I knew the area pretty well, so I was confident. Meanwhile, my girlfriend just kept bitching on about how she wanted Applebee's. Classic girlfriend. I took some side road, and of course, the truck followed right behind me, still flashing his lights. I kept turning onto other roads trying to lose him, but he was staying right on my ass. Finally, my girlfriend started to realize how weird this was and began to get a little nervous. I was nervous too. Our area has high crime rates, and some gang initiations involve running people off the road, forcing people to pull over and shooting them, among other car-related things. So we both were scared that this could be the case. I kept taking these side roads, and he kept staying right behind me. Finally, we arrived at a Walmart. This Walmart has a back road where the trucks go to unload. I took the turn onto this road without even using my blinker, still trying to lose him. I ended up driving about 80 miles per hour on the small back road, but he literally did not stop. The small road warps around to the main parking lot, and I skipped all the stop signs and ignored all the safety rules of the road. Thanks to the fluorescent Walmart lights, I was able to see that this truck was red and beaten down. I could see the Applebee's in the distance, so I decided that I would park and just deal with this like a man. At this point, my girlfriend was actually tearing up. This whole ordeal may not sound scary, but trust me, it was. Once we pulled into the Applebee's parking lot, I noticed that the red truck was no longer following us. He just disappeared. I looked at my girlfriend for about 4 seconds to comfort her, and when I looked up, he was gone. This was honestly terrifying. I pulled up to Applebee's and met my friends inside, and they could tell that we were visibly shaken up. We were so shaken that we didn't even get anything to eat, even though we were super hungry. I managed to glance out of the window and saw the same red truck parked about 3 or 4 rows behind our car, just sitting there with the lights on. At this point, I had enough. I grabbed the steak knife from the table and went outside to find out what was going on. When I got to the truck, the same truck that was following me around, nobody was inside. The back seat was full of duct tape, random tools, tarp, and other everyday items that seemed especially creepy at the time. I took pictures of the license plate and waited around for the owner to show up, but he didn't. There was no doubt that he saw me waiting by his truck, my sweatshirt hood up, looking like some kind of weirdo. I called the police to let them know what was happening, and left it at that, as gang initiations were starting to pick up speed in our area. The truck was the same one that followed me around, and yes, it could have been just some teens trying to be funny, but don't fuck with me, my girlfriend, or Applebee's.
Number 3.
I am a woman in my mid-20s, and I live in a mid-sized city at the edge of a mostly yuppie neighborhood that is close enough to downtown to still be considered urban, but still relatively quiet and considered safe by most people in my city. We have our fair share of car break-ins, I guess, but that's the usual extent of our crime reports. In addition to my full-time office job, I work part-time as a maitre d' at a high-end restaurant. After work around 11 p.m. on Sunday, I really didn't feel like cooking, and was dreaming of a cold margarita. So I went to the bar across the street for a late night dinner by myself, still decked out in my nice work clothes, a conservative dress and heels. This bar is somewhat of a dive, and I always forget that they host punk shows in their back room on Sunday nights, which typically draws a sizable crowd. The commotion and swarm of rowdy drunk people didn't really bother me that much until I felt someone bump my bar stool towards the end of my meal. I look back, and a man maybe about 10 to 15 years older than me was pressed up against the back of my seat and smiling at me. I brushed him off as just some drunko trying to get the bartender's attention, until I felt his hand gently rubbing my back for a few seconds. I looked back at him, obviously confused, and he smiled again. I had just finished closing out my tab, so a little flustered, I jumped down off my bar stool and stumbled a bit since I was trying to move quickly.
"Are you okay?"
he asked. He was very tall and slender, wearing a tattered red plaid jacket and a newsboy cap. "Yeah, why? I only had 2 drinks. I'm not drunk or anything. The bar stool is just high up, and I'm short."
"No, you don't seem drunk. It's just that you look so sweet and innocent, and I just want to make sure that you're okay and feel safe here."
I kind of laughed inside because even though I look out of place, I have lived across the street from this bar for years and have been there countless times. Yeah, I'm totally fine.
"Do you want me to walk you to your car to make sure you get there okay?"
By this point, I was beyond tired of this guy's unwanted attention. But I'm used to being approached by creeps when I'm alone in public. But what I said next was a huge mistake that I will never make again. "Actually, I live across the street. Really, I'm fine." He grabbed my shoulders gently, looked me in the eyes with a huge grin on his face, and pulled me into a bear hug, even though I resisted.
"I just want to make sure you're protected."
"Whatever, dude. Good night." My 1-minute walk home was uneventful, and I forgot all about him for 2 days. There was a few bars on my block and 2 convenience stores, so the area experiences pretty heavy foot traffic and is well lit until about 1:30 to 2 a.m., which makes my story even more alarming, as no one on the street saw, or if they did, they didn't report what happened next until I did. I live on the 2nd floor of a duplex. My bedroom faces the front street, and there is a balcony attached to it. The only way to access this balcony is to either walk through my bedroom or somehow climb up there from the street, which would take a certain amount of dedication and athleticism. There's a big window by my bed where I have a full view of my balcony, and since I'm not on the ground floor, I have trees blocking my windows from my neighbors across the street. I usually leave my blinds open so that the sun wakes me up in the morning. 2 days after the encounter in the bar, I was sitting on my bed reading a little after midnight. Thank goodness I didn't have music playing for once, because I heard a noise outside on the balcony. First, a muffled thump, then some faint creaking footsteps. I whipped my head around to look out the window, and there he was, standing at the edge of my balcony, about 6 feet from my window, smiling and waving at me, like he was just dropping by to say hello to an old friend. Naturally, I lost my shit and booked it in the opposite direction, out of my back door. I've experienced a home invasion before, which is a story for another time, so I was on autopilot and called the police. They showed up within 5 minutes, but he was gone. The officer told me a bunch of things that didn't need repeating, to lock my doors and windows, keep my pepper spray by my bed instead of in my purse, and for God's sake, stop telling strangers where I live. If I saw the guy again, I was to call the police immediately. Since then, I have had a million horrible thoughts about what could have happened to me in the days leading up to this without my knowledge. If I had been asleep, or not heard him out there, he could have easily broken my bedroom window and climbed right in. If he had had a gun, he could have shot me through the window at a pretty close range, and for all I know, that night at the bar was not the first time he had seen me. and that night on my balcony was not his first time up there. It goes without saying that I'm keeping my blinds closed from now on, because come to think of it, there have been times where I've had the sinking feeling that I was being watched while sitting in my bed, but I always brushed it off as paranoia and didn't even bother to look outside. But I need to stop speculating. What happened was already scary enough.
There's always a reason to be afraid.